April 6, 1988. I'm going to interview Lucy Caruso Cocciardi, Cocciardi, of 12 William Street, Hastings-on-Hudson. Well, let's start from the beginning. Were you born in Hastings?
Yeah.
Were you? And do you mind telling me when?
August 6th,
August 6th.
1918. I was born on Warburton Avenue down here.
Oh, really? August 6th, 1918. Whereabouts in Warburton?
You know where the timeout is? I don't know the number.
Where the what is?
Timeout? That bar there on top.
Oh.
That was the first apartment my mother had. And after that, we moved to 376 Nodine. And then we bought the little house, the Schaefer house on Washington.
Schaefer, was it? I thought it was, hadn't it belonged to a man named Odell once?
Well, I only remember Schaefer owning it.
Now, when did your family come over?
Well, my mother came over, let's see, should be in, born in 18, my brother was born in 16, 1912 maybe, and my father about the same time. My father
Did they know each other before they came?
No, my father came to Dobbs Ferry to live with his brother, and she came to Hastings to live with her brother. And they met and married at St. Matthew's.
Oh, I see. Did they come from the same part of Italy?
No. My mother was near Rome, and my father near Naples.
So they were married here in the United States?
Here in Hastings, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what, I know you had 2 brothers.
5 brothers.
5 brothers? What were
and
their
1
names?
sister. Pat, Louie, Frank, Joe, and Sam.
Yeah, Sam was Nancy's husband. Excuse me. And your sister?
Yolanda.
So there were 7 children.
7 children.
Goodness, that was a big family. Yeah. How'd you all fit into that little house?
Little house. There were 10 roomers.
Really?
And 4 of us. And my mother and father.
My goodness. Did the men work on shifts?
Yeah. Yeah. And she had just beds all over the place.
My goodness.
And we all slept in the one room, the 4 of us, with them on the other bed, see? 4 of us in one bed, and mother and father in the other bed.
My goodness. How did you all fit?
And the roomers were all upstairs. There's 3 little rooms up there.
Oh, are there?
Yeah, and you could fit 10. And then my mother had to remember who was having breakfast, who was taking lunch, and who was home for supper because of the shifts.
She fed them?
She fed them and washed their clothes, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we worked hard.
I was going to say.
She just had the children and gave them to me, you see. And then I was about 16 when my sister was born. That's how the span was, you know, between the older and the younger.
Were you the oldest?
No, my brother Pat's older, 2 years older.
So you helped your mother a lot.
Oh, yeah. I did.
Goodness, that was hard work.
That was most of it, yeah.
Well, where did the men work?
At Anaconda.
At Anaconda?
See, they came from Italy, and not knowing a word of English, not knowing where to live, not having a job. My mother took them all in, and she was called their mother. She was the mother of all these. There's only about 1 or 2 left in Hastings that she took care of.
How did they know about her?
They would tell one another, write to Italy, and one by one they came over, called their wives if they had any, or some of them married here in Hastings.
My goodness, now that would have been during the World War?
Or
right after the World?
Even before. Because these men that lived in the house took care of me. They used to say they diapered me.
Yeah.
I says, well, how about doing it now?
Yeah.
So a couple of them went back, getting the pension from Anaconda and Social Security. See, they were the later ones that went back. But all the others, most of them are gone. All gone.
So Anaconda, even back then, was working 24 hours?
Yeah.
It would have been
Yeah.
American Brass then, right after World War I.
Yeah, American Brass, right.
Uh-huh. So they did work a 24-hour shift.
And like I said, she would have the stove going all the time. It was coffee or lunch or supper.
My goodness. Now, what did she charge the men for that kind of service?
Oh, $10 a month.
A month?
A month.
My goodness.
You couldn't see that charging that today. Couldn't. Who would do it?
Oh,
Really?
Who would work that hard?
Right.
And she did all the laundry for them?
She loved laundry.
Really?
She loved laundry. Funny,
Yeah.
laundry and cooking. That's how I got to cleaning and ironing. She didn't like that.
So you had to do that. Did you iron the sheets?
No,
No.
we didn't have time. Really.
No.
She just washed and put them back on on the bed.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
So the beds were always occupied.
always taken care of.
Oh, my goodness. Well, what hard work.
Yeah, my mother worked hard.
She must have.
Yeah, and we even did it here in the other house. We had a couple of rooms there too.
You mean the house at the head of William Street?
Yeah.
Now, when did you move there?
We moved there when my sister was born, which would be, she's about 16 years younger than me. What would make
1934.
her 50, 51, 54?
Well, now, was that house, when you bought that property, that house was already there, or did you build the house?
She built it. My mother built it, yeah.
She
My
did?
mother had it built. Marinello, I think, was the builder or something like that.
So she designed it as a family
Well,
house,
more or less,
or
yeah.
with as apartments?
As apartments, there's 6 room upstairs and 6 downstairs.
Was that the way it is?
Yeah.
So she
She had 3
again
bedrooms.
rented rooms to workers
A
down
couple
on the
of them,
waterfront.
not too many, because there were 7 of us then.
My
In fact, I
goodness.
always slept in the dining room.
How about your father?
But
What did your father work down on
he
the
worked there
waterfront?
a little while because everybody else was working down there, and he thought, well, he'll do it. But he didn't like working inside. The claustrophobia stuff he didn't like. Like he worked for Thompson Institute up there, and then he did with the builders. Like he built when they built the school, the high school, and he went with different builders to build houses up on the hill.
What was he, a mason? I think you told me.
A mason, hod carrier. And
Now, what kind of, all the men that roomed with you worked down at American Brass.
right.
What kind of jobs did they have? Do you remember?
Well, some worked on machines and some just cleaned up because they didn't know how to read and write at that time, see. And as they were here, they learned.
I was going to say, did
They learned through
was
us
it
as
evening
kids.
class? Did
No.
they go to school, or did they just pick it up?
They just picked it up and learned from us, from the kids.
Did you speak Italian at all?
I did.
Did you?
I had to. I had to learn because I didn't know what they were saying. And my mother wanted to learn English, so she would answer and talk it English. But she didn't want to lose the, didn't want me to learn it all in Italian. But when my aunt come up from Dobbs Ferry, she didn't know a word of English. I would go into all this Italian. In fact, at Anaconda, they used to get orders. Delustro would get them, and I would read some of their orders from Italy because I was Italian.
Did you all speak Italian?
No, just me.
Oh, really?
My brothers wouldn't learn a thing. They would understand some, but never spoke it.
Huh. So you went to the Hastings High School,
High school.
and is that where you learned English?
Yeah, that's where we We all went to the school here.
What was the feeling of the teachers? Were you allowed to speak Italian, or did they discourage
No, they didn't
you?
have Italian up here. I went into Latin in my later, because I thought, well, I could go to college, but my mother says, no, girls don't go to college.
Oh,
They get married or,
that's too bad. Did
Yeah.
your brothers go to college?
they all, well, the Army took most
That's
of it.
true. That's true, yeah.
And Sammy could have had the opportunity of going to college when he came back from the service. But then, as I said, Nancy wanted to get married, and that was the end of his education. I thought, what a possibility, of having this handed to you, and you could take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But,
So education wasn't something your mother and father valued?
well, they did to speak English. My mother then even wrote it,
Did she?
because she was more educated than my father was. And, yeah, she would sit and she'd read, and,
Did she really? And she was sort of self-taught then?
yeah.
So she enjoyed reading newspapers,
And-
magazines,
yeah.
books? She sounds like she must have been a wonderful woman.
Yeah, tough on me, though.
Well, I suppose being the girl,
Yeah.
that you had to assume a lot of the responsibility.
But like I say, all these people, that worked there. My uncle now, that she came to live with, he worked in the pavement company, and then it burned down. And after that, he worked for the Central for a little while, because they picked up some of these men that were without jobs. And
Was that why the pavement company moved? Because of that fire?
I think that's when it really
'Cause
got out of
they
Hastings.
moved out to Long Island.
Yeah,
Um,
but they got jobs for most of them up here that wanted to stay in Hastings. Because people that worked at Anaconda were either from Dobbs Ferry, Hastings, or Yonkers.
Did most of them walk to work?
Some of them did. During the war, there was a good 2,200 down there.
Really? At Anaconda?
Because I remember running their little pay stubs. 2,200.
Did they have a union down there?
Yeah. See,
Did-
my brother
were most
Louis,
of them,
my brother Louis was in the union side of it. My brother Frank was company side. And they could never agree.
that must have made it for a lot of dissension.
Hilarious. They would fight. Because my brother Frank was all company. You couldn't talk about Anaconda.
Well, now, what did he do down there?
He was the foreman of the wire mill down here. And Louis was just he could have been something, but he wasn't that type. He rather lived life. So he
was a union man.
he was a union man.
Were they both living home at this time?
Oh, yeah. It was just during the war that it all came about, when they got married after the war. And
Did they go into service too?
my brother Pat was in, Louis was in, Frank was in, Joe was in, and Sammy.
Oh my goodness, all five?
Yeah, the whole five.
Different branches?
Different branches, right. They called, when Sammy went in, they called that the Korean conflict.
Oh, so
But he was in Italy,
Oh,
which was strange.
yes.
Why they called Korean, I don't know.
Because the Korean War broke
It
out
was over
in 1950.
yeah.
I remember I was in...
But even when we buried him, they put it on his tombstone, which was strange. I didn't think it was called that. Yeah, my brother Frank was in the front lines. He had the cannons shooting the big ones. And my husband was right behind him, maybe about 50 yards or 50 whatever they called it over in Germany.
Did they know each other?
They could never get to one another. It was always moving that fast. Frank was in the trucks, the heavy artillery, and he was firing.
Did they know each other, though?
They knew of one another. In fact, my husband met a few of the boys from Dobbs Ferry over there.
Oh, my. Huh. Now, he's from Dobbs Ferry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Now, even during the war, they'd go up the Hudson here when they were coming back, and they would let us go out to the dock and wave to all these fellas, because some of them worked in there, and they were so glad to see that we were welcoming them back.
Where did they go, up to Piermont?
They went up to West Point, up that way.
Oh.
They had to go to Camp Smith, was it up that way?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where they got their mustering out and everything.
Oh.
Yeah, they got up there and get their shots or whatever they had to get off the boat.
Yeah.
But they knew that they saw us when we were out there. It was quite a thrill for them.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it was a thrill for you, too.
Another day, they had a Navy E-Day during the war.
Oh, yes, we have some photographs of that.
I'm not in any of them, either.
I don't think so.
Well, we were told to wear dark, like navy blue skirts, white blouse. They gave us a red, white, and blue handkerchief to put here, blossom out like. And we served what they had, soda and all the beer and everything. And then the boys were allowed to go up in town at a point, you know. And it was a nice day down there. It really, I don't know, the sun was out. It was really a Navy day.
Was that was when Admiral Rickover came in?
Rickover came in and gave them we all got little buttons to wear, Navy buttons. I don't know if I still have mine.
We have a number.
You have a number?
Julia Chemka gave us one that his father had.
His father had.
And,
I don't think Julie ever worked down there. No.
I don't.
No,
I don't
never
know.
worked there, no.
How about the Washington Street Bridge?
The one that went down to Anaconda?
Yeah.
That's how we went to work.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we went across, went down, and then up into the office. That building that's all burnt was the office building. And then you went in there, that was the older building. And then the one that runs this way was all offices too.
Oh, and the one that has the aluminum siding, that was the research?
That was the research lab, testing.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, I was up and I can almost see it. One of the buildings there, the big one, and we overlooked the tops of the other buildings. But we were on the top floor.
You were responsible for the printing.
I was in the printing office, yeah, I did all that. And then when my boss got sick, then I took over for a while, and then she came back. But like I said, after I left, it seems that Bill told me that they did away with most of the printing. They sent it out. Well, they had no one to do it, really.
What sort of things did the print? Did you do a employee newsletter?
Oh, that was mimeographed.
That
was sent to all the boys in the service. We would go down into the recreation room, which was the coffee room downstairs in this building that we were in.
Yeah.
And once a month, we would send a 5-pound package of goodies to all the boys that were in the service. And in there, we would put the letter and all the dope on went on during the month.
Oh.
Yeah.
What kind of goodies, for instance?
Like candy, writing paper, pens, and all that stuff.
And they did that every month?
Toothpaste, yeah. Toothpaste and shave cream, anything like that. We put, as long as we could get 5 pounds in there, we got it in.
And they did that for all their servicemen?
All the servicemen. In fact, the what is it now? The Riverview, or the River, that restaurant down there. That used to be the Rock House.
Oh.
That was the Rock House. And whenever there was someone leaving for the service, that's where they had their parties. I remember.
That burned down, didn't it?
Yeah.
And somebody lost
That
his
he
life
died.
there.
Yeah, he died in there. Then they rebuilt it. And it changed names and changed hands all the time. But, yeah, that fellow, they could never find him, really.
Yeah, that's what I understood. Did the, now as you, going back to your growing up years, did most of the people around here work down in the waterfront? I suppose they all did.
Everybody come out of the school went down there to work. And even some of these engineers or whatever, their children used to come during the summer when they were home from college. We had a lot of college people during the summer to help them through their studies too.
Did the company do that deliberately to help them earn money for school?
I think so. They were more interested in everybody and their welfare. I think it was, you don't have that now. They just want the work and nobody works like it used to be. They wouldn't put in the hours that I put in, say. I'd work until 11 o'clock at night.
Really? Did you get paid overtime?
Yeah. And then I was working every day until the state caught up and said, you can only work, you have to stay home one Sunday in the 14 days. So I had to stay home.
You mean you work 7 days a week? Is that common?
Well, just at certain departments, you see, and I happened to be in that one that you couldn't get the machines to work any faster than they did.
No.
And since we turned out all that work, we really went. And the price changes were mailed from our place. And it was fantastic, the operation we had down there.
How about the men who worked there? Did they feel company loyalty?
I think everybody that worked down there was loyal. It was just the union got in and turned a few faces and demanded. They were more on the demanding side. They wanted this and that. But it ran the same way. You had the 3 shifts for the mill, and we weren't governed by we weren't going to be attacked by the union. Forget it. They wanted to come into the office, but they wouldn't let them. And there your office was right down the, Washington Avenue there.
Where, that bridge that went over the tracks, how far up Washington Avenue did it come, do you remember? Is it about where the bookstore is now, or did it go up
No, it
Ridge
didn't.
Street?
Oh, it didn't go as far as Ridge Street, no. Down about 25 feet more. It's,
Be about where the bookstore is,
Yeah.
I guess.
and then you went across that. It was wooden. And then you went down the stairs. And then you had to go up another 3 flights to where I was working.
No elevator?
And I used to say to them, build it across, and all I'd have to do is walk across, this
Yeah.
going up and down I didn't like. But, no, they had a dumbwaiter. That was the elevator that used to carry the paper and stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
See, we used to have our storeroom way down the end of, near the cable accessories. And I'd go down there, and I had to get special shoes, with the steel toe. Because I was walking in the mill. You had to be protected. And I'd walk down, and I'd put out what we had to be shipped up. And the truck would come and bring it, and the dumbwaiter would bring it up.
Was the work very dangerous in the mill?
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Were
It
there many
was.
injuries?
Yeah. They had a nurse all the time. Yeah.
Did they get workman's compensation if they were
Yeah, they had
severely injured?
disability, yeah. They had disability at that time.
What did they, I've often wondered what it was like in the winter down there. Those great big buildings, they weren't heated, were they?
Oh, yeah, we had heat
Well, probably in the office building, but in the mill.
in the mill. Well, it was cold, but yet the heat from the machines came out, you see. And once you closed your windows and the heat of the machines was always working, it wasn't that cold.
Must have been hot in the summer, though.
Hot in the summer, yeah. We had fans. We didn't have no air conditioning. We just opened the windows and let the fan blow out.
Of course, being near the river, you probably got a breeze some of the time at
Not
least.
much.
No?
We got the heat from the roof.
Oh, yes.
And then we'd get 2 or 3 fans, and yet we couldn't have too many fans because if you put the fans near the machine, the paper would curl up, you know, blow
Oh,
away.
yes. Oh, yes.
So regardless, you
Uh-huh.
just took it. It was fun, but like I said, I never thought I'd go back to work once I had left to have I had the 2 children then. And then I went back to work in the town of Greenberg. That's when I stayed the other 18 years.
Yeah. How, 18 years?
I
you
was
were
down there 15 years.
15 years. Wow, that's a long time.
Mm.
When did most of the band take their lunches?
Yeah. They have a
Did they have a-
cafeteria.
They
They
did.
gave you the coffee. You bought coffee. And they didn't have too much, they didn't have sandwiches or anything. There was a time when they ordered it, say, from the village or from a restaurant up here, and they'd take it down. Or if someone was going to lunch, they'd bring back a sandwich. We used to have a diner here by where A&E gas station is. There was a diner there.
A&E.
The one on the corner of Washington.
Oh, with the
And
jetty
Walburn.
station?
Yeah. There used to be a police bar and grill, and then there was a little diner. And that's where most of them ran up. They ran to Susie's at the end of Washington Avenue.
Well, that was a bar, wasn't it?
Yeah, but then she gave them food, too.
Oh, she
It was
did?
food, yeah. It was
Good.
food. And
I guess
other-
there were quite a few bars along there.
Well, bars galore in Hastings. That's all you had was bars, beauty parlors, and banks. That's all they did.
Really? Did the bars all serve food?
They all had
Did
food.
did they tend to be ethnic bars? I mean, did the Italians go to one bar?
No.
The Hungarians?
They didn't separate like that
They
down
didn't?
there.
Had always wondered about that because there
Although-
were so many
Although all
different
those,
kinds of immigrants. I wondered how much
although
they
all
mingled.
those Italians that my mother had coming and going, the Polish seemed to take refuge down there. That's where they married, and all the children were born down there.
down on Railroad Avenue.
Warburton and South Side
Mhm.
Railroad Avenue, which was all those people that, and now the children were working down there. You see, after the mother and father, the children were down there too.
Hmm.
And then because it's so expensive to live here, everybody's moving away. And there isn't that work anymore.
Yeah.
Isn't that work?
What did they do? What did the boarders do for recreation? Did they ever have time for any fun?
They play cards, and they'd have wine. Mama made all that stuff.
Your mother made wine
Oh,
in
yeah.
addition to everything else?
Made wine, made everything else. Beer, soda.
She made beer?
Beer, soda.
Soda. Well, now I remember making root beer. My
Root
mother
beer.
made root beer when I was young.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And we had the well there where we sent down all the bottles, and that cooled the water. See, cooled water cooled the beer and everything.
Where was the well?
It's still there. I think Chucky's
Really?
covered it up.
Huh.
I think they're afraid that someone will open it and the children fall in or something.
Yeah.
And I think it dried out more or less.
So that's what you depended on for your water.
A lot of it for, because you didn't have the room. I mean, if you had a refrigerator, you didn't have enough for all this beer and stuff. A whole watermelon would go down, you know, and pick that up.
My goodness. I think I better turn this tape over.
Fry those, not well done. Fry them, and she'd jar them, put them in jars, and we'd have them all winter.
And how about eggplant?
We didn't go in for that. You see, that again took too much time. My mother
Oh.
never took things that had to take time. She wanted to just go out and get a tomato, and that was it, or a cucumber. Or,
How about melon?
no, she never tempted things because we had peaches and pears in the yard.
Uh-huh.
We had 2 pear trees that you couldn't keep up with the pears. And peaches galore. Every other thing was a peach tree. Now there's nothing. It's unbelievable. And
They
we
just
can't
die out?
grow anything.
Hmm.
It wasn't until a few years ago that the last pear tree was gone. But pears, you see, we could put them up.
Yeah.
Peaches we put up. Anything we could put up, my mother just kept.
Mm-hmm. Very thrifty, hard-working woman.
And that's what I have.
Now, how did you get your property?
Well, from the paste bureau. They were selling.
Oh,
And he wanted someone that he knew because of the sewer problem. And he said to my mother, why don't you have Lucy come here and build the house? And my mother said, gee, that's a good idea. So she bought the property from him and then asked me to sell my house and build this one. But I didn't have that much money.
where were you, in Dobbs Ferry then?
Yeah. I was 5 years in Dobbs Ferry, that's all. But before that, I lived 2 years in that little house.
Did you ever know that this area was once known as Farragut Heights?
Farragut Heights, or was it,
Oh, it's Farragut Heights, and we have a map that the Historical Society, the developer had worked out, and from
Farragut
Washington,
Heights?
from Washington Avenue to Division Street, they had mapped out about 50 plots. Can you imagine? Luckily, it never came true.
Well, Farragut, that's the Farragut house on the aqueduct.
Yeah, but this area, some developer had the idea,
Put Farragut on.
Farragut Heights, but it never came to be. Can you imagine
I never
50
read-
houses along here?
I never read my deed. I thought it was Ward Carpenter or...
Well, it was a surveyor, Lord
I
Carpenter.
don't remember who else was on that. But that's how I came to come back to Hastings. So I was out from 50 to 55. I'm back here again with my mother for a year until we got this place started. Because of all the problems, I didn't want it. I wanted sewer taken care of. The village wouldn't help me. I wanted something else. I don't know. They never did want to help me. From the beginning, since I took the place, it was a sore arm.
Too bad.
And one problem after another. In fact, when they were looking for the gas leak, it was after the fire on Ridge Street. Someone came down William Street and smelled gas on William. So they came and they were checking it all out. And I came home from work and Bill was out here. And I said, what's going on, Bill? There were holes all around the house. I said, what's going on, Bill? And he said, well, you weren't home. And he said, they're looking for your gas line. And I said, well, you should know where that was. I said, the gas pipe is on William Street. Oh, he says, I forgot. So with that, he called the gas company and said I was home. And they came right away because they had to check this thing out. And I told them where it was, so that I wasn't leaking gas, you see. So I said to him, it's them in the factory. How do you know it's them? I said, who else is on this line? I said, I know my mother's on that side, but this is a new line put in. When they took over, they put in. And sure enough, that was a leak. We would have been up the next 2 weeks. We would have flown to heaven.
What date was this?
After that Ridge Street fire.
Goodness, I forgot now when that
What
was.
year was that? Had to be after, well, I was living there, 56. 56 or 7?
My goodness. You remember the Resolute Wire Company that
Yeah.
was,
That was stretched from that end to that end. And they had fine wire. In fact, I don't know, I remember, I used to get 10 cents to cash their checks. And all I did was went down to the bank and cashed their checks.
I mean, the
You
workers'
wonder,
check?
yeah, you wonder how they did that in those days.
Why didn't they cash them themselves?
Well, they didn't have time. You see. I just paid them all off. It was a mean little top that I was. I'd go down with these envelopes and then I'd come home with their money.
Were these people who worked for you, that
My
lived with your
mother,
mother?
too. Yeah.
Maybe they were because of the English.
Probably because no one knew how to talk English. And then that was taken over, and then got to be the conduit in that building.
What,
In Paceboro, that was the conduit cable, wire and cable.
oh, and that became National Conduit and Cable?
Yeah, and that was taken over.
Well, what happened to the Resolute Wire Company?
Well, I think they took it over, really.
The National Conduit?
And then it all went down.
What was the time frame of that? Do you remember?
No, that was still American Brass, I think. Anaconda was just coming in around then.
Well, National Conduit,
When did they go down Anaconda? That was back in,
well, they were back in the 1800s.
no, it was
1880.
after that, because that's when that building was only 2 stories. They put a third,
Yeah, I have pictures of that.
and that's why there's always a leak in that building. Smith gets a leak upstairs all the time. I know he does. In fact, I think it goes all the way down, and they keep putting stuff upstairs, but you'll never catch it. It's in between the floors.
That's all.
And then, like I said, when I just built the place, and they had the gas leak. Then when they came up to fix that gas leak, the county asphalt, they call themselves, with their bulldozer digging to follow the line of the gas pipe that went in. And with that, they hit my water line that come in the house. So all the dirt went through the whole house, through the boiler, and you know how it starts from downstairs and goes all the way up to even the bathroom upstairs. The toilet closet was full of sand. And they were worrying about the tree. That's why I hate that tree. And by digging around it, they were afraid they were going to kill it. So they went running around for hay to protect that. And here I am, no heat, no hot water, no nothing. The house full of sand. So then it got to be a real hassle. So I was working with Mr. Hill then. And Mr. Hill says, he called him up and he says, "What are you doing to my girl?" And he says, what are we doing? So he said, this girl has problems down there on Ward Street. "Oh yeah, we know about that." He said, "Well, when are you going to fix it? Otherwise, how would you like a change in your assessment?" So boy, did they move. And the one man, he was going to retire, and he didn't want to be responsible for this problem here. So he was taking his time until his retirement day, so someone else could be the fall guy. But then Mr. Hill says, "You better go in there and do it." Then it was a big hassle that who was going to clean my line? Well, I got a new water tank out of it, because that was gone. And he cleaned the whole place. Some of the pipes had to be replaced and everything. And we finally were on speaking terms, but the tree was protected, and I was dying. And since then I said, I don't want that tree there. And everybody, oh, it's a beautiful tree and all this, but you didn't go through what I went through. And County Asphalt had to pay for it, because they were the ones that did it. They were pushing it over to different ones, Con Edison and, you know, they didn't want to do it. But they were responsible for it, and finally got corrected. And it was cold. Was it bitter cold? And then they were
So they
running.
did this in the winter?
Yeah, this happened in the winter. Well, it was winter when that fire was on, and I said this was a week or two after that the leak sprung up here.
That must have been a
And then
very hard time.
I had an awful time when I came to that house. You find a brand new house and then all these things.
Well, that's tough.
It was horrible.
Did the workers down on the waterfront, did they all mingle together, Anaconda with the pavement company, with Zinsser?
Oh, yes, yeah. In fact, with Anaconda, all the men, they had a ball team, and they'd play against softball, play against one another. In fact, there was bowling in Hastings, under the Hastings house. They had a couple of alleys down there. We used to bowl there. And there was bowling leagues, the baseball leagues. There was all this, and you know, recreation for them. And then at Christmas time, they had these big parties down there with Santa Claus and dancing.
Did you go to Swift Farm? Was that the name of the?
Schmidt's Farm.
Schmidt's.
Yeah, that's where the office had their party.
And then was that an annual event?
An annual thing, and we were served the dinner. Well, it was an all-day affair up there, too. Of course, some of them played golf. They were allowed to go on the golf course up that way. Because Schmidt's Farm knew St. Andrews. Yeah.
So the company did try to be
They were
good to its workers.
all the time. I would say, I don't think you'd ever find a place like that. They took care of and took interest in everybody. It was more family. It was family. Because, like I said, there was 4 of us down there. 4 of us. I mean, how many more, and then my father, and how many more could you get down there, you see? But everybody worked down there. They couldn't wait to get out of school to go down on Anaconda. And they liked that because you could walk to work. They didn't have the transportation and stuff you needed.
Well, did the workers feel the same kind of loyalty to Zinsser and to the pavement company?
I would think so. Because most of them were foreign, too. A lot came from Pennsylvania, Polish people.
From Pennsylvania? How'd they...
There's a few left in Hastings here from Pennsylvania. In fact, some of them have their homes there yet. Their mothers and fathers had their homes and they kept them up. Yeah.
So was there a real sort of miniature Lower East Side here in Hastings?
Yeah.
That's always been amazing to me. Dr. Hopkins, in his dissertation, says that there were 30 different languages and dialects spoken by the children in the public schools. I found that very hard to believe, but...
30? I don't think there'd be that many. Unless he called, like, say in Italy, you could have 10 different dialects.
Yeah, well, that's what I figured.
Yeah,
And
that's
probably,
what, Polish would be the same way.
and I'm sure
And of course,
Russian
you
as well.
can't tell with Polish people, they were Russian, and then they separated with churches, you see. The Greek and the Orthodox and the, you know, all that was separated. That's what separated the Polish people.
Was the church?
Church. And they're still dedicated to those churches.
So the churches played an important part
Yeah.
of the social life. So the companies had dinners. I suppose the churches had picnics and dinners.
Stuff, yeah. But there again, you turn to the church if you needed help or anything.
And then, I guess the bars were part of the social life.
Well, they were crowded to the door, let's put it that way, especially on payday.
Yeah.
And some of the women had to come up and get the paycheck from their husbands so they'd have some money.
Yeah.
Instead of-
Who usually managed the money? Did the women manage it, or did the
I
men?
think most of the women did, yeah. Because they had children and they had to have that money.
Mhm.
It wasn't that much like it is today.
Yeah. Well, what would they do? Give their husbands an allowance to spend for beer?
That's it.
Yeah.
So much a week.
What they drink mostly beer?
Beer.
Yeah.
Beer.
What did beer cost in those back
The
in the 20s?
nickel.
A nickel?
Nickel, dime, after a while, blue nickel most. And I remember going down to the bottom of the hill here with a little bucket, and that was 25 cents. A little bucket
for
of
a
beer
bucket of beer.
down the street.
Oh, and you go get it for your father, or for
Yeah. For anybody that, was in the house.
Yeah.
Mom would say, go down and get some beer, and she'd give me a quarter in the bucket. It had a little lid on it, a handle to it. Because after that, we used it for picking berries. We didn't have beer anymore. You
Yeah.
didn't have to go down and get it from the tap. It
Yeah.
was all bottled.
How about the whistles? Each factory had its own whistle, I gather.
Well, just the 12 o'clock whistle used to blow.
No morning whistle or
No.
afternoon
It
whistle?
was just the 12 o'clock. And that told everybody it was time to eat. Yeah.
So everybody
Usually
ate 12 and
12.
12. Did you have an hour for lunch?
An hour for lunch. But some of the men had half hours. They were on a different schedule, and they had to get an order out or something like that.
Now, the dock, where
Yeah.
the Sojourner Truth is now, was that the Anaconda dock?
What's down there?
The ferry sloops? No, the,
Slopes?
is the recreation
the
of a ferry
marina.
sloop?
Not the marina. Between that and Robeson?
No, it's almost down here. There's
It's
a
by
little
the-
dock, which
there's
had been
a-
an Anaconda dock, I thought.
There's a dock where where the courts are, right? Tennis courts?
No, it's south of that.
South. That's still, that was their dock to, when the cable came in.
Yeah.
The barges would come in and unload there.
And then
And that
they
would be
ship stuff out
bars.
from there?
Bars would be like that
Mhm.
and thick. And they'd unload those bars, and then they would get heated in the rod mill. And if you ever saw it, the way they form a snake, hot, burning, they smelted it down. And the guy he had forks, and he'd catch it and twist it around, and it was amazing.
So, boy, that must have been dangerous.
Hard work and dangerous, yeah.
Were there lots of accidents?
Not too many down there if they burnt themselves or something, but they had to wear gloves, you see, and goggles, and if they didn't,
They did,
then it was
yeah.
their own fault.
Uh-huh.
But then after the cable, when it was, put out from the rod mill, went down through, then they made fine wire out of the cables, different sizes.
Hmm.
But
Must
it
have
all,
been some operation.
yeah,
Did they train the men in how to do it?
you had to be, yeah.
So they must have had a,
Well, the one person that worked got a helper, and he learned, you see. And
I see. So they taught
learned
each
from
other.
one
as well.
another.
Uh-huh. Now, your brother, who was the foreman,
Yeah.
how did he learn to do his job? Had he been a worker
Well,
and then
he was a worker,
promoted?
and then he got promoted. Yeah, that's one thing, they took care of their own. Yeah.
So there were promotions. And what kind of a salary would someone have made down there in the 20s?
In the
30s.
20s and 30s. Well, a good 15,000, I would say.
Well, that was pretty good, wasn't it?
That was good.
Yeah. It seems to me that would have been,
Top pay, probably.
that would have been top. But then your brother was pretty near the
My
top.
brothers were, two of them were like that.
Uh-huh. Well, I would say that that would probably, in those times, have been very good,
Yeah.
thinking what my father, who was a minister,
And then another,
paid.
yeah, and another thing, they had golfing. They belonged to a, you know, they'd have tournaments. And
When
had-
did they play? Over
they-
at St. Andrews?
No, that was a private club all the time. They'd go down to Sprain or Dunwoody, or they'd go up to the one on Knollwood Road, different ones where they could go and play.
Oh.
And like I said, then after they'd have a dinner. They'd always have a dinner after all these tournaments and stuff. And they'd have trophies. My brother Louis was good at it, and so was Frank. They had trophies galore.
My goodness. Was the dance platform that was up here
At the park.
top of William Street, I guess?
No, it was up in the park.
Oh, I thought it was on the aqueduct.
No, it was up in the park.
Oh, you remember that?
Oh, yeah. We dance up there every
Yeah.
Sunday.
Oh, every Sunday.
And then when it rained, then someone thought maybe we ought to have a canopy over it, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then they'd have the Polish dancers or different organizations who would rent it for that day.
Uh-huh.
And they'd have the Polish, would even have a group from Jersey come up. And they'd have all the polkas and everything like that. It'd be that day. And then they'd cook. They'd bring all the food. And you could eat all the food up there.
That must be
Yeah.
fun.
And that just died.
How come?
And all the wood had to be thrown away. No one took care of it, and they didn't come up anymore
Oh,
because no one was taking care of it.
not too bad.
Yeah. That park should be used more. It's a beautiful place up there.
No, it is.
It is beautiful.
But it is underused.
They have the place to cook. It's a big thing. And years ago, they had a lot of picnics up there. All the Frankfurters and everything would be cooked up there.
See, I was up there this fall.
St. Matthew's had one picnic. They used to have one maybe in September up there.
I remember when I first came here, there were a number of, I would hear the music,
Oh, yeah.
but I haven't
Every
heard,
Sunday.
I haven't
No
heard
more.
for,
Just died out.
that's too bad, isn't it?
And of course, they'd park all the way up.
Yeah.
Along the way there.
Well, that's another reason it's easy to park there.
Yeah. And that's when Hastings, Village of Hastings, decided they would take that and take care of it and pave it and everything.
You mean this parking lot?
They didn't take care.
No.
And you tell them that, and they said, oh, there's nothing in the minutes that we did that. I said, there was a resolution that you were to take care of it. No, it wasn't. All right. It's your problem, not mine.
Well, did you ever feel there was any discrimination down there?
At Anaconda?
Yeah. I mean, again, women or different ethnic groups?
No.
You felt it was a good mix?
Yeah. Because even where I worked, we had different ones. They weren't Scotch and Polish and Irish. We all were mixed. Yeah.
But you didn't feel any
No, nothing.
antagonisms or... Well, that's
If
good.
you didn't like the job, you left. They didn't care, more or less, you know. But if you stayed and you were good, they would
They'd promote you.
promote you and you'd get it. That or get more money.
So you felt they were very fair towards their
All the
workers?
time. It's just when the union come in, I think they wreck everything. They ruin everything. I don't believe in unions.
Were the other factories unionized? The
I don't
pavement-
remember them being that unionized. Union came in later down there, after the war, I think. We didn't have it before the war. And they were gone.
Yeah.
Have what is now, well, it was they called it the Harshore
Yeah, that took over Zinsser.
from Zinsser. But now they talk about polluting the water and everything. Once in a while, we went down there to swim. And sometimes the water would be red and sometimes it would be different colors, but we still went in the water.
Well, where did you swim down there?
Right at the, we called it the home. It was at the end of Zinsser's.
Oh, because there was one up here.
Yeah, that was the
Willow
point.
Beach.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That was the point, and that's the home. And we'd always say, where are you going? Oh, we'll go up to the point today. And we'd go up there. Not that we were good swimmers, but as long as we got near the water.
Uh-huh.
And some of them went crabbing, not fishing.
Did girls do that too, as well as boys?
Oh, yeah.
So the
I
river,
did it.
Yeah, the river was in part of your life then.
All the time, yeah. On Sundays, that's what we did. We went down and crabbed all day.
Hmm.
Well, it didn't be all day because we were with 2 or 3 nets. We had a bushel full by noon, and we come home and cooked them and cleaned them.
My goodness,
That's how much was in the river.
my goodness. Did you fish for bass?
No, there wasn't. We didn't go out that far. You
Oh.
see, we stayed near shore. If you had a boat, you went out in the middle. Then when you hear a couple of them missing, you know, we didn't go. We didn't care for boats.
Yeah,
Couldn't afford them anyway.
yeah. My goodness, you could get a bushel of crabs in the morning?
Oh, sure.
Hmm.
We would.
How big were they?
Big crabs. No big.
Like blue crab, were they blue crabs?
Blues, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of crabs. And that was our afternoon cleaning them.
Yeah, I can believe it.
And that's what I say, you were part of the house and you were part of work and part of recreation, that's all we did.
Mm-hmm. They have a pension plan? Anaconda? They did.
I
So-
missed out on it.
Why, did you have to be there 20 years?
I think it was a Pioneer Club, yeah. 20 years.
No, and you were just there 18.
15.
Huh.
But if I had gone back, maybe they wouldn't even go retroactive. They wouldn't go back and pick up those lost years. So I think, whatever, you wonder if you made the right move.
Yeah, hard to know.
Yeah, even up there, I had the 18 years, all right, I was old enough to retire. But if I had had a couple more years, I would have had a good pension, you see.
During the war, was there a lot of security? Because you were involved in war manufacturing. Was
Well,
there...
there was a shortage of men because of all the men that were drafted.
Yeah, but I was wondering about security. Did you have to show IDs all
Oh
the
yeah,
time?
we had a button, our pictures on it. Yeah,
And were there a lot of guards around, or?
there were guards to let you in, but the workers you would know if there was someone that shouldn't be there. You'd know he didn't have a button or he didn't punch a clock. You'd have to. And in those days, you went to the bank, and with your little tag, they had the envelope and gave it to you. See, it wasn't like you get a check now and you go to the bank or deposit it. You had to go to the bank and get your envelope.
Oh, the bank handled all
5
the
cents
payments.
an envelope, yeah? They
That's
filled
nice.
it up.
Well, how did they know how much to pay you? Or did
Well,
they have the
well, we
envelopes
were-
there?
They had the envelopes. We ran them through the machine. We put their names on them and ran whatever had to be on it, yeah.
Was there any Ever any spy scares or anything of that nature?
What do you mean with the war on?
Yes.
No, I think they were pretty well protected. They took care of that, yeah. I don't remember ever being scared. I'd be down there, as I say, till 11 at night, sometime alone, and working.
But there were never any stories about spies or espionage or things of that nature.
It's just that they did it themselves.
Yeah, you started to tell me about that.
Did it
What
themselves.
happened?
Well, on the battlefield, discharge.
To set off mines?
Yeah.
And they
They didn't work. It didn't work. The ones they were shipping out that was being shipped so fast was faulty wire. So they were picked up on that, and I remember having to work for 3 solid months, photostating all their orders and all the paraphernalia. In fact, I had to go to their Pawtucket mill, because most of it was being sent from there. And I was up there, and we were put up in a hotel. And I worked and worked until I said, this is ridiculous. I could be in Hastings doing this. I'll teach somebody how to run that photostating machine. So that's what they did. And someone was coming to Hastings that weekend, so I came home. But I was up there for a while, and then finding out later that was wrong. They were testing the same cable when they shipped out all the cable.
What exactly was the matter? Was it somebody,
Well,
they did it deliberately, or was it a
no, it
mistake?
was just that it was production that time, to send it out.
They didn't test it before they sent
They were
it?
testing the one cable all the time. That's what the outcome of the case was.
Oh,
Well, they put this man in prison
really?
from down here.
My goodness, what was the date on that?
See, that I don't remember. Because it was just before I left, I think.
Was there
It'd be the late 40s.
Was it a big
right
scandal in
after
the paper?
war. Oh, sure. I wonder if you'd find that in the paper.
Well, the New York Times,
40s.
would they have picked it up?
Yeah, everybody had it because it was federal.
Remember the man's name?
Mr. Whitaker.
Whitaker? What was his position?
He was vice president.
Really? And he
Because
was
Johnson
responsible.
was the president. But Whitaker was the fall man. He took the
You think he was really,
I remember sending his shoes to the prison.
oh my goodness.
They came to because we shipped a lot of stuff out. I said, Lucy, would you send this stuff? And boy, I cried.
Oh, because you knew him?
Yeah, knowing him.
Was he a nice man? What was his first name?
William.
My gosh, this is the first I've ever heard of that.
Well, I don't think anybody knew about it. Just Lucy, as I was involved. Now I don't think it has any. It wouldn't harm anybody now.
Yeah.
It's over with. It's been years. And
Well, it wasn't, but you said it was in the paper, a big scandal.
yeah.
My gosh.
Like I said, it was federal. They were being investigated. But you never found out the result. The result came later.
Did during the war, I suppose the production really increased?
Oh, God, yes. They couldn't get enough people to work there.
Did they hire more women to?
Women came in, more women than men.
Mhm.
And that's when they called, all these factories, they were calling them Annie the Riveter or something.
Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter. There's an outfit in Yonkers that I still have a bracelet with all little rivets.
Really? Did the women do some of the dangerous work?
Well, they did all the fine wire work
Did they?
and the coils and the cotton.
Hmm.
Spools of cotton around the, cotton cable. They did a lot of work with them.
And they came from Hastings?
Hastings, I still know
Yonkers,
one from Dobbs Ferry. In fact, she's coming home from California this week, I think. And she used to be the cleaning woman down there.
But then they got better jobs when the men were gone.
Well, they stayed on, and some of them were still cleaning women,
No.
and some that didn't have to work just stayed home. But, I remember 2,200 people down there.
During the war.
A lot of people.
Yeah. How about the Zinzer? Did they have labor shortages too?
Well, they didn't have that much work down there. Nobody ever thought of going down there, say, leave this place and go down there. No one ever did that.
Oh, really? They'd stick with one place. And then the sons would come along and the daughters, and they'd go to work there too.
Right.
Huh. Did the, I guess the women didn't get involved in the unions.
Well, they belonged to the union.
Did they?
They did, yeah. Because when they did go on strike, there was no pay coming in.
What strike was that?
The strike down there.
Yeah, what year was that?
It was after the war, too. In the 50s. Because they had a union office down at the foot of where the railroad, where you say the bridge came in. That's where the Union Hall was. And
On the Washington Avenue side?
yeah, on that side of Washington. And they were trying to get money together to give food to some of these men that were out on strike. And that was tough times. And then after, I think they settled, and some of them went back to work. But that was an awful time for all the people
Was there a lot of
involved.
bad
that-
feeling?
In the union, yeah. There was a bad time
How did those who didn't go on strike? Was there
Well,
antagonism?
there. Yes, that's why I say I had it in the house with my brother Frank and Louis. Louis was out on strike, and Frank wasn't. I said, I told you shouldn't have belonged to it. And it was always an argument.
Yeah. Did they reconcile eventually?
Oh, I don't know. The two of them never agreed on anything, really. No, those two never did. And Pat moved from Hastings anyway, so he never got involved.
How was it down there during the Depression? You would still have been quite young, but do you remember?
There wasn't any work.
No work.
Because when I graduated, I was, 16 years old, was in 35, and I couldn't even get a job. And I would go there to a book concern in Dobbs Ferry. Every once in a while you'd hear that they were hiring somebody. And they were printing Bibles and world encyclopedias and stuff. And I'd go up there in the morning, and they'd say no, I'd come down here, and they'd say no, and I'd come home. Because where else could I go, And this one time, my mother was very sick, and I didn't go out looking for work. And that morning, the head of the office came up and knocked on the door and said, would I go to work? And my mother says, yeah, you go. And I said, well, I thought you were sick, But she said, oh, I'll be all right, you go. So I went.
So they came to you?
So I went to work then. But I was on WPA, working first up in the county in Westchester, White Plains, in the county office building. I was in where they kept the records of the trials, cases and stuff. And then Mr. Collins, he drove a car, and we used to pool that. And then the jobs were going out from there. So I said, well, how about getting me in Hastings? And they said, oh, there is an opening down there at the village hall. And that's where I wrote the tax rolls. And I worked down there. It was in 36. I started down there in 37.
But there was a lot of unemployment.
You couldn't get work. And especially me, I was short, 16, little tiny thing. They didn't believe how old I was. So I'd have to walk around with a diploma and my birth certificate.
For goodness sakes.
That was hard.
Yeah. And all those years that you were growing up, your mother had boarders.
Yeah. All those years. Like I said, we had weddings over there. The men that lived in the house, picked up the girls in Hastings and got married.
So your mother gave them a wedding feast?
Yep, we had parties.
My goodness. And where did you have them? Up in the
Up
park?
the yard. No, up in the backyard.
Oh.
Backyard. Set up a couple of tables.
Did many of them marry Hastings girls?
I'd say 5 or 6 of them.
So did they stay for some years with your mother? I mean,
After they got married, they got their own
Yeah, of
places.
course.
Yeah.
But I mean, many of them did live with your mother for some time.
Yeah.
So they were really like older
Family.
brothers.
Yeah.
Did
In fact, one of them, his Grandy, he lived on Main Street. My mother had him baptize me.
And say,
Like I said, it was family.
did any of them bring their girlfriends from Italy over?
No, then they had a place for their wives when they brought, not really girlfriends, just they were married, some.
Oh, some of them were married.
Yeah, and they brought their wives and family over. And then they found a place, apartment.
So they were very frugal and saved their money.
Oh, sure. And then they weren't making that much, really. But my mother always, took care of them all.
She sounds like quite a woman.
She worked hard.
So what was this immediate neighborhood like when you in the 20s and 30s?
Well, there was all woods up here.
Oh, this was woods.
All woods up here.
Did you play in the woods?
All the time.
Yeah.
And the quarry.
Well, let's see, the quarry, that would have been the time that Lanyard made it into a park.
Park.
Were you warned to stay away from the pond?
Oh, well, we'd find our way down, yeah.
John Cocciardi said that his mother was always telling him not to go near it, but he wouldn't anyway.
Yeah, we all did. We made a way down.
Yeah.
That's when we found the man down there.
What was that?
He was floating.
Really?
One of the
Is that the man from Yonkers who committed suicide?
Might have been. But all we know is that we were looking for our ball. We thought it was a basketball. So the kid went in to get him, and it was his bald head, see. So we all ran home. We didn't care what happened.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually saw it then?
Yeah, we saw it. Then my mother would tell me about the story of some man that lived in that 376 Nodine. His wife went out that night and he was left with the baby, and the baby cried, and he beat the baby so hard that he killed the baby. So he dumped it in the pond. So after that was when we wouldn't go anymore. Figured, no, that was enough for us.
Well, I read in the clipping somewhere about a man during the Depression,
That would have
left
been,
from Yonkers, and he was walking on the aqueduct. And they later found him in his pond. He jumped in. They found his glasses on the shore.
well, we didn't stay long enough to see all that.
Oh my goodness, that must have been a terrible
It
shock.
was, not even knowing him, you can imagine how we felt.
Yeah. It was still a beautiful park then?
Oh, yes. It was full of, fruit trees and beautiful shrubs that he imported.
Yeah, that's what I heard. John said that he and his mother used to walk up there and sit on a bench and watch the sunset.
Even with their property they had, everybody went up on the aqueduct. You walked there at night until the sun went down.
Everybody used it the way they do now.
Yeah.
Well, I walked. That was one of the reasons I bought this house, because of the aqueduct.
Yeah, well, a couple of them had bikes, you ride the bike, but,
Was most of your social life right here in this neighborhood?
right here, we had a movie house. We always had a movie house.
The one that's down there now?
The Muse, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you walked to Dobbs Ferry, to the embassy. That was the movie house in Dobbs Ferry. When this one closed up, we went to Dobbs Ferry. And we'd walk because you didn't have that much money.
Yeah.
50 cents would get you into the movies.
So a lot of your entertainment
And
was
then-
sort of homemade.
Yeah, and, well, we used to have the movie open. They'd give out dishes every time you went, so you went every week and made up a set.
Oh, yes.
Think of those days.
Well, are a lot of the women that you grew up with, are they still around?
A few, not too many. Because I have pictures of my graduating class. And looking at them, you can point out which ones have gone.
What would you say, 50%?
Well, a lot have moved away, and we haven't heard.
Yeah. Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah, I said a good half of them, yeah. This is only a handful now that I know that I went to school with. In fact, we wanted to get a reunion together, but we weren't going to have it just the 1 year. We'd combine 2 or 3 years because there wouldn't be that many. That went down the drain. That was last year's talk. Because I got sick and everything went down. But I'll bring it up again. Maybe we could have something.
Yeah, well, some of the
Reunion.
have just gone to Dobbs Ferry. We're not too far away.
Not too many in Dobbs Ferry. No, I can almost point them out,
Men and women.
Men
Who were, how big was your high school class?
My class, we had a couple of hundred.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Was
We had a big class.
Dr. Hopkins would have been
But no, yeah.
superintendent.
Because then Myers came in after him.
And did you know Mildred Davy?
Oh, yeah, she taught me the English. Was it English? No, Jones taught me the English. Davy, what did she teach? She was a guidance teacher. She was the one that told me I could go to college. And I believed her when I told my mother I didn't go to no college.
Well, she probably recognized you had the potential.
Probably, yeah. She's very nice.
Yes, she is.
And Miss Jones is still alive. You see her walking.
Oh, I don't know her.
She lives up on Rosedale, I think. And occasionally I see her going to down the village.
Oh, really? I don't know her. I know Davy.
I think Jones is a little older than Davy.
Now, Davy, the last time I saw her, she had a cane and she was kind of
Oh,
limping.
well, somebody said she had a stroke. Did she, or is it just something else?
Jean Watt had a stroke.
Jean who?
Watt. She had been a teacher, but a physical education teacher, but not in Hastings.
Not in Hastings.
Gee, I didn't care to know about Davy.
Maybe they thought with the cane, they probably surmised she had a stroke. I don't know.
I don't
Because in
think so.
Hastings, you know, word of mouth is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had this woman dying too. She lives down the avenue here. She went to the A&P, an elderly woman, and the trailer hit her, the A&P trailer. But didn't go over her, but they said, oh yes, it went over, killed her and all this. But no, she broke her hip. And now, because no one to take care of her, she's going to be put in a nursing home. Miss Catherine Lee.
I've heard that name.
Yeah.
Oh dear, not a shame.
And of course, I used to see her a lot, and I used to pick her up and take her to work in Dobbs Ferry. She used to do houseworking. And she belongs to the auxiliary, so I met a girl yesterday. I said, what are you doing for her? And they said they haven't found out where they're putting her yet, but they were going to send flowers and stuff. I said, I think you should. She's one of the oldest members, you see.
What did you consider your neighborhood? What would be the geographic boundaries? Would you consider the neighborhood from here to Washington or down Ridge Street or all the way down?
No, I think the aqueduct and Broadway separate us from north and south. That's it. You were, this is the village, and that was the other section of Hastings.
Yeah, how did you feel about people who lived in it?
Well, there wasn't any love between them,
Yeah, even in school?
even in school.
Really, there wasn't rigid?
Yeah, because they got the benefits all the time, and yet there were qualified girls and boys on this side that never got recognized. It was always like politics too.
Well, now, when you say got the benefits,
Well, scholarships and stuff like that. They never benefited by anything. It always went up there.
even bright village kids never
Never got it.
were students bitter about that?
A lot of times there was, but they'd overlook a lot. Because you wanted the fun and games too.
So you really didn't mix?
No. Till after, when these people, children got old enough to buy up that way, and some of them are up that way now. There isn't that anymore. That faded out. And then there's too many foreigners. I call them foreigners. They're not Hastings people.
So I'm a foreigner.
Well, no, you're involved, more or less. But those people never get involved. They take the train and they come home to sleep. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You tell them anything, you ask them anything, they don't know. And you say, don't you live in Hastings? Because I find that so with working up at the polls up in Riverview Manor. Those women don't know. And it's funny. It's funny. I took care of this neighborhood. I was the Republican district leader down here and got to be area chairman of the village too. But I never pushed my weight. You know, people call me, say, Lou, this light is out, or Lou, get somebody to help me, or Lou, do that. And I'd go to the mayor or the trustees and stuff, and they would hear sometimes. And like I say, now I need it, I got nobody. Not fair.
Well, that's too bad. Well, I think it's good that this division is broken down.
Yeah.
Well-
There isn't that now.
Is there,
But there's no work here to keep anybody. That's why they go down the city, and it's, money is down there, and jobs are down there.
yeah, well, the waterfront is certainly due to change.
To what? More factories? Maybe.
Oh, I don't think it'll ever become industrial again. I doubt it.
I think that's the only thing that'll put Hastings back on its feet.
I would certainly guess that it's going to become residential.
Oh, yeah. See, that's why I wanted to
See,
find-
that's what's happening all along the river.
Yeah.
And the village doesn't own that property. The only weapon it has is zoning. So it's hard to know what's going to happen to it. Your kids went to the Hastings schools
Oh,
too.
the two of them, yeah. Connie was only in Dobbs Ferry for 1 year, I think, before we moved here.
Did she have any of the same teachers you did?
Some of them, not
Really?
Not all of them, yeah. Because she took the commercial part. And so did Mary. No, Mary was academic all the time.
Which is the one that's in Switzerland?
Connie,
Connie.
she's the commercial one. She went to that Berkeley and White Plains.
And what does Mary do?
She's a computer analyst.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, one of those crazy jobs. And she's trying to locate up here in White Plains, and she can't find any.
Or should you live in the city, work in the city?
No, she works in Jersey, across the river.
When she has to go over the Tappan Zee Bridge every day? Ugh.
That's what's throwing her. She
Yeah.
don't want to do it anymore.
I wouldn't want to do it either.
She wants a job up here. She had it, but this offered more money, and she thought her husband was going to be located out there in Paramus.
Oh.
So she thought at the time they were getting married that this was what they would be better off with. But and he got stationed out here, and that's it. She made a mistake.
Well,
The money is good, but it's the taxes in both states that's wrong.
well, is there anything else you can like to tell me?
You probably have it all written up. Have you?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll go listen to this tape and kind of make an index of what you told me. And then we hope we can get funding so that all of these can be transcribed. And eventually we'll use some of the material probably in our newsletter. We may be able to get a book out of it. So I'm going to ask you to sign a release, if you will.
Oh, I broke my glasses for some reason.
No, I never leave without them.
And I hope to find the rest of the stuff that I know I have some of it. But as I say, the place is so crowded. And
What was your job title down there, do you remember? Then I kind of,
I don't know, I'd just say I was a clerk of everything. We did printing, advertising, and sales of the Washington.
many pieces of paper in here. I can't get this out. Isn't that quite a picture? That's from the 1880s. And I think it's the pavement company.
My uncle was in.
Did he work in the pavement company? Oh, you said your mother came to take care of her brother.
Brother and his wife. Wife was sick. She later died.
And he worked at the pavement company? Do you recognize any of those people?
No.
You see the children at both sides? Do you think they're
Yeah.
girls or boys?
They look like girls. And dresses on with the pinafores.
Yeah. What do you think they were doing down there? I've looked at this picture a number of us have, and we've tried to
You know, when we went to Mount Vernon, the school went to, when we were graduating, we went there on our trip. And one man stood on this side, and then he ran in the back and stood here.
Oh,
And that's
yes.
how they got it centered. Maybe that's what they were doing, putting a little girl on each side and centered her.
I've seen pictures like that, where somebody is shown twice in the same
Twice,
picture.
yeah. They going back to center it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. There you go.
I don't know if you could use these. You want names on them. I thought maybe I
Well, let me
could
see.
get in touch with a few people.
Or you can tell me what